Today, we're going to talk about our core and its full system. So rather than just thinking about our abs as abs being strong, but we're going to talk about this corset system that our abdomen creates between all of the musculature that wraps from our pubic bone up through the rib cage, down and around, and back into the back. So when we're looking at our core, rather than just thinking about having strong abs, we're really diving into creating a circumferential strength system. So making sure that our superficial abs can be active, as well as our deep abdomen, those ones that are like the furthest down, that really seal in everything. And then talking about the importance of primarily external obliques today. Internal obliques are important as well, but those seem to naturally get trained a little bit better than our external obliques, which those are the muscles that really hold our rib cage kind of down and into our body and create that kind of shrinking of our rib cage to create more of that small, tight waist that really gives good support for the low back, which is why having a strong core can show a large decrease in low back pain and decreased pain in things like sciatic and nerve pain and even mid-back pain. So let's dive in. So looking at getting into a 360 abdominal activation. So not only to help fix and correct a diastasis recti, or the abdominal separation, but also just to prevent things like hernia and future separation in the abs with addition of back pain. So if you were working through a sit-up and you were just to tuck your hands back behind your head and you're doing a sit-up without a lot of thought, a lot of activation, you're just doing a sit-up, you're gonna notice how I get this doming of my stomach. So I kind of sit up and this all kind of pockets and protrudes forward, and then I relax back down. So that's a sit-up without a lot of thought, and basically just looking at contracting the superficial abdomen to sit up, right? I have a little bit of a diastasis recti right above my belly button, as you can see when I sit up, kind of this spacing between there. So to work on correcting and sealing all of that back up, or at least to not make it worse if the fascia just didn't finish healing all the way, if we're looking at taking a breath in and breathing out to draw the abdomen in, so we're not sucking in with our breath, right? You're blowing out and creating a drawing in. So the drawing in draws the belly button down toward the spine and creates a flattening of the lower back to the surface that you're lying on. So once you're there, to achieve this 360 motion is you want to think about taking your rib cage and drawing that down and together as well. Sometimes fresh out of post-pregnancy, or if you've suffered a hernia or some sort of abdominal injury, sometimes you might even take your hands overlapping the rib cage and kind of pull that tissue together as you do your abdominal work. If you develop this strength and control and you can feel what's happening, then there might not be as much need for that. So as I tighten down now I want to pull my rib cage in. So you'll watch my hands as they come closer to one another. So we're going to pull down and then tighten the rib cage. And that really seals everything together. And now when I do a sit-up, there's no more doming, right? I've controlled that, and now I'm fully working my full abdomen instead of relaxing my obliques and just sitting straight up and getting that big doming. So this will help flatten stomachs for females and males both, as well as helping to strengthen, stabilize core, and recruit all of those muscles that are so important to develop that corset of stability. So now to come to some controlled strength work when we're trying to address this and actually integrate it into a workout. So a great way to really get the body connected from lower body to trunk to upper body is to really get this core center engaged and turned on. And the best way to do that is through a few isometrics. So if you take a yoga block, a squishy ball, really anything that'll create just a little bit of space between your legs and your hands, and you're gonna sit or lie in the same hook lying position, relaxing the head and shoulders down on the floor. And then you're gonna pull your shoulders kind of back in toward the mat. So the goal isn't to push through here, but to relax head, neck, and shoulders. And then you're gonna take a breath in, and as you breathe that out, you're gonna do all that drawing down rib cage is tightening in, and you're compressing the object down against your thighs. You're gonna hold that contraction for about 8 seconds, and then relax. So you'll feel that the lats have turned on. This is all drawn down and in, and it should feel difficult to hold it there. And then you'll do it again. Breathe in and out and press. And hold. You repeat that anywhere between 5 and 8 times. If you struggle with a little bit of postural deficit and you find that your head is kind of cranked back and you aren't comfortable here, then certainly give yourself some head and neck support so that your head and the musculature on the front body can stay relaxed. And then we're going to bring a leg up. The goal is the same. You're drawing down and in, and you're compressing down. Head, neck, and shoulders are staying relaxed, and we're holding for about 8 seconds. Only press as hard as you can control without pushing so hard that you start losing this space for your hip, because now we've turned this into a hip flexor exercise and it's much more strenuous than focusing on the lower abdomen. And then we'll switch sides and do the same thing. 8 seconds, upper body's relaxed. Focus really in on this cross body pattern from the leg that's up to coming kind of diagonally across the body, and relax. And you'll switch back and forth, doing each side 8 to 10 times. And now, assuming all of that felt great and you're not feeling too much tension through the back and you were able to stay relaxed up top, we're gonna bring both knees up so the hips are at 90, knees are at 90, in this nice relaxed position. Same thing, same goal is happening here. We're staying relaxed through the upper body, pulling down and in through the rib cage and abs. And then you'll take your object and you're gonna do the same thing and press into it. Again, make sure that you're sustaining this 90-degree position so it doesn't turn into too much strain on the low back. Again, 8 seconds, anywhere between 5 and 8 times. And relax. If you need to bring the legs down between reps, that's perfectly fine. And then you can come back up into it when you're ready to do it again. And then from here, you can kind of ditch your yoga blocker ball, and we're working to keep that same contraction pulled down and in. And now you're gonna take a foot and drop it down and raise it back up. We'll drop down and raise it back up. Goals of this being to reduce the wiggle in your hips and to not let the lower back leave the surface. So we're maintaining stability, keeping that abdomen pulled down and in, keeping the rib cage down and tight. So things we're looking to not do would be to drop and let this arch and then have to kind of crank to get back up, right? So we don't want to create any motion that we can't control. If you find that that's not an attainable goal for you, then go ahead and bring the legs down. Tighten up just the same way, and we'll just reverse it and march here and march. Once you feel like you're in control there again, you can bring them up and try again. So a great way to test, not only just if you can draw your rib cage down and in, but to test each side of the oblique, is to actually do just a small crunch. And we're still trying to create that drawing down of the abdomen so we don't get that big belly bulge. So we're gonna draw up, and then looking at our rib cage border here, you're gonna try to take your rib cage and just kind of close it down to the other side without side bending. So it shouldn't be that my effort is here and then here to try to close this down, but rather as you come up, you want to try to take your rib cage and draw it down toward the pubic bone and then relax out of it. It's a really small and subtle motion, so we're going to come up and then we're drawing down and relaxing. So you're going to draw down and relax. So ensure that you're not side bending and wiggling your trunk from side to side in this. test both sides, see if one side feels a little bit stronger or easier than the other. So we'll come up, and now I'm going to try to bring this rib down to my pubic bone without a side bend. And it's just a couple of inches of movement. It's not a lot. But oftentimes, if our internal obliques have really created this overpowering environment that the external obliques don't need to work, you might see that you have this sort of large rib flare and that you can really fit a lot of fingers underneath here without a lot of tonicity in the rib cage, or right underneath where that diaphragm kind of comes down and presses. So try these out, small, a couple of inches each way, and then we'll roll into the side and get a little bit of movement-based exercise as well. So now we're going to look specifically at engaging and recruiting and activating in through the external obliques. So if you're having trouble really finding that rib cage, drawing in and the ability to pull it in and together, this is a great way to start finding that musculature. So we're going to come onto our sides, lying down, and the stability arm is going to come down in front rather than being up and supporting here. So we're going to bring it down in front and then slide your legs just slightly forward of where they would be even with your hips. And then we're going to take this arm here. And the goal of this is to actually create rotation and then drive yourself out of it. So the obliques are made for core rotation, not necessarily hip to belly rotation, but rib cage integration, rotation within your trunk. So we're going to press the elbow back, and then you're going to draw up and together, doing a small side crunch, and then pushing into this rotation, thinking about taking your elbow kind of up and back toward the diagonal back corner of the room, and then you're coming up and out of it, and rotate. Without the rotation, a side crunch is just a side crunch, which sure, it's definitely going to get some oblique work happening, but without this rotational component, we're never fully reaching the external obliques potential. So it's slow motion. It's not designed to do 100 reps up, right? Because you're really pushing into each direction, thinking about the angle of your rib cage and the way that it wraps around your body, and that's the direction that we're crunching. All the while, you need to keep in mind still that your belly needs to be pulled into your spine. So don't be soft through the center as you're crunching. You've got to keep everything pulled in and the abs working and contracting, and then bringing those obliques down on top of it. Use your breath here. It's easier to do the crunch on an exhale rather than having a full diaphragm and trying to crunch down on top of it. So shoot for 10 or so per side. Do each side, rotate back and forth a couple of times, and then come back to your hook line position and trying to create that drawing down and in and pulling that rib cage down and creating that nice solid brace and corset and that 360 abdominal stability. So once you feel safe and controlled in that nice rotational contraction, we can add a little bit of lower extremity crunch so that you're even getting further range and more connection between the legs and the core. So you're going to come back down into that same position, legs just slightly forward of neutral, hand is coming back behind, you're rotating back, maintaining stability here, and then as you rotate forward, you're going to bring the knee up toward the elbow. And then you're going to lower it all back down slow, reaching that full rotation, and then making sure your feet and ankles come back together as well, and crunch. Check on that abdominal separation, or check that the belly isn't doming as you crunch. Really try to keep belly button pulled to spine and keep all of the structure nice and tight. Again, low reps, so you're only doing 10 to 15 on each side. Check in with your body, see how it's doing. Always come back to your resting position and let your body kind of settle back into this neutral. Take a few breaths and then check in and see how well you're able to contract and draw in.